Hanuk, also known as Enoch, 14:8-25, and the vision was shown to me thus: See, in the vision, clouds invited me and a mist summoned me, and the course of the stars and the lightnings sped and hastened me, and the winds in the vision caused me to fly and lifted me upward, and carried me into the Shamaim. And I went until I drew near to a wall which is built of crystals and surrounded by tongues of fire. And it began to terrorize me, and I went into the tongues of fire and drew near to a large house which was built of crystals, and the walls of the house were like a mosaic floor of crystals, and its groundwork was of crystal. Its ceiling was like the path of the stars and the lightnings. And between them were fiery cherubim, and their shamaim was as water. A flaming fire surrounded the walls, and its portals blazed with fire. And I entered into that house, and it was hot as fire and cold as ice. There were no delights of life therein. Fear covered me, and trembling took hold of me. And as I quaked and trembled, I fell upon my face. And I saw a vision, and see, there was a second house, greater than the former, and the entire portal stood open before me, and it was built of flames of fire. And in every respect it so excelled in splendor and magnificence and extent that I cannot describe to you its splendor and its extent. And its floor was of fire, and above it were lightnings and the path of the stars, and its ceiling also was flaming fire. And I looked and saw therein a high throne, its appearance as crystal, and the wheels thereof as the shining sun, and there was the vision of cherubim. And from underneath the throne came streams of flaming fire so that I could not look upon it, and the great esteem sat upon it. And his garments shone more brightly than the sun and were whiter than any snow. None of the messengers could enter and look upon his face because of the magnificence and esteem, and no flesh could look upon him. The flaming fire was round about him, and a great fire stood before him, and none around could draw near him, 10,000 times 10,000 before him, yet he needed no counselor. And the most Kadashim who were near to him did not leave by night nor depart from him. And until then I had been prostrate on my face, trembling, and YAHUAH called me with his own mouth, and said to me, Come here, Hanuk, and hear my word. And one of the Kadashim came to me and woke me. And he made me rise up and approach the door, and I bowed my face downwards. Abarim, also known as Hebrews 11:1-40, and Amunah is the substance of what is expected, the proof of what is not seen. For by this the elders obtained witness. By Amunah, we understand that the ages were prepared by the word of YAHUAH, so that what is seen was not made of what is visible. By Amunah, Habal offered to YAHUAH a greater slaughter offering than Cain, through which he obtained witness that he was righteous, YAHUAH witnessing of his gifts. And through it, having died, he still speaks. By Amunah, Hanuk was translated so as not to see death, and was not found because YAHUAH had translated him. For before his translation he obtained witness that he pleased YAHUAH. But without Amunah it is impossible to please him, for he who comes to YAHUAH has to believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who earnestly seek him. By Amunah, Ruah, having been warned of what was yet unseen, having feared, prepared an ark to save his house, through which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to Amunah. By Amunah, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he was about to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By Amunah, he sojourned in the land of promise as a stranger, dwelling in tents with Yitzhak and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise, for he was looking for the city having foundations, whose builder and maker is YAHUAH. By Amunah also, Sarah herself was enabled to conceive seed, and she bore a child when she was past the normal age, because she deemed him trustworthy who had promised. And so from one, and him as good as dead, were born as numerous as the stars of the Shamaim, as countless as the sand which is by the seashore. In Amunah all these died, not having received the promises, but seeing them from a distance, welcomed and embraced them, and confessed that they were sojourners and strangers on the earth. For those who speak this way make it clear that they seek a fatherland. And yet if they had indeed kept remembering that place from which they had come out, they would have had the chance to return. But now they long for a better place, that is, of the Shamaim. Therefore YAHUAH is not ashamed to be called their YAHUAH, for he has prepared a city for them. By Amunah, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Yitzhak, and he who had received the promises offered up his only brought forth son, of whom it was said, In Yitzhak your seed shall be called, reckoning that YAHUAH was able to raise, even from the dead, from which he received him back, as a type. By Amunah, Yitzhak blessed Jacob and Ashu, concerning that which was to come. By Amunah, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed each of the sons of Usap, and did reverence on the top of his staff. By Amunah, Usap, when he was dying, made mention of the outgoing of the children of Yasharal, and gave orders concerning his bones. By Amunah, Masha, having been born, was hidden 3 months by his parents, because they saw he was a comely child, and were not afraid of the sovereign's command. By Amunah, Masha, having become great, refused to be called the son of the daughter of Pharaoh, choosing rather to be afflicted with the people of YAHUAH than to enjoy the pleasures of transgression for a time, deeming the reproach of Hamashiach greater riches than the treasures in Matzarim, for he was looking to the reward. By Amunah, he left Matzarim, not fearing the wrath of the sovereign, for he was steadfast, as seeing him who is invisible. By Amunah, he performed the Pasah and the sprinkling of blood, lest he who destroyed the firstborn should touch them. By Amunah, they passed through the Reed Sea as by dry land, and when the Matzarim tried it, they were drowned. By Amunah, the walls of Yericho fell, having been surrounded for 7 days. By Amunah, Rahab the whore did not perish with those who did not have Amunah, having received the spies with peace. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to relate of Gideon and Barak, and Shamshun, and Yaphtha, also of Daud and Shamuel and the prophets, who through Amunah overcame reigns, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword. Out of weakness were made strong, became mighty in battle, put foreign armies to flight. Women received back their dead by resurrection. And others were tortured, not accepting release, to obtain a better resurrection. And others had trial of mockings and floggings and more, of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were tried, they were sawn in two, they were slain with the sword. They went about in sheepskins, in goatskins, being in need, afflicted, mistreated, of whom the world was not worthy, wandering in deserts and mountains and caves and holes of the earth. And having obtained witness through the Amunah, all these did not receive the promise, YAHUAH having provided what is better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. Abarim, also known as Hebrews 11:1-40. Note, it is written in Abarim, Hebrews 11:13, in Amunah all these died, not having received the promises, but seeing them from a distance, welcomed and embraced them. So we see that the righteous, who have passed, have not seen the promise yet, but they will, in the kingdom, in the renewed earth. Also, we see, in Abarim, Hebrews 11, Amunah, meaning faith, is not to just believe and that's it. Amunah is connected to works. As it is written, for as the body without the spirit is dead, so also the Amunah is dead without the works. Jacob, also known as James 2:26. Amunah and works go together. The evidence of Amunah, faith, is shown through the works. Hebrews 4:15. For we do not have a high Kohan who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not transgress. Galatians 5:16. So I say, walk by the Ruah, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. 1 Peter 5:8-9. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy the devil prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the Amunah, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings. Ephesians 6:10-11. Finally, be strong in YAHUAH and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of YAHUAH, so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. Romans 13:14. Rather, clothe yourselves with the Master, Yahusha HaMashiach, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the flesh. 1 John 2:16. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father but from the world. Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. 1 Corinthians 6:18. Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually, sins against their own body. 1 Timothy 6:11. But you, man of YAHUAH, flee from all this, and pursue righteousness, that of YAHUAH, Amunah, love, endurance, and gentleness. Psalms 119:11. I have hidden your word in my heart that I might not transgress against you. 2 Timothy 2:22. Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, Amunah, love, and shalom, along with those who call on YAHUAH out of a pure heart. Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what YAHUAH's will is, His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Ephesians 4:27. And do not give the devil a foothold. Colossians 3:5. Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Hebrews 2:18. Because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. James 1:14-15. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to transgression, and transgression, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. Luke 22:40. On reaching the place, he said to them, Pray that you will not fall into temptation. Peter 5:8. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy the devil prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Galatians 6:1. Brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in a transgression, you, who live by the Ruah, should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. 1 Corinthians 15:33. Do not be misled, bad company corrupts good character. Ephesians 6:13. Therefore put on the full armor of YAHUAH, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything to stand. Psalms 119:133. Direct my footsteps according to your word, let no transgress rule over me. 2 Peter 2:9. If this is so, then YAHUAH knows how to rescue the righteous from trials and to hold the unrighteous for punishment on the day of judgment. 1 Thessalonians 5:22. Reject every kind of evil. Titus 2:12. It teaches us to say no to unrighteousness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and righteous lives in this present age. 1 Corinthians 10:12. So, if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. Proverbs 1:10. My son, if law-breaking men entice you, do not give in to them. Matthew 26:41. Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The Ruah is willing, but the flesh is weak. Ephesians 4:22-24. You were taught, with regard to your former way of life, to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like YAHUAH in true righteousness and kadosh. Psalms 141:4. Do not let my heart be drawn to what is evil so that I take part in wicked deeds along with those who are evildoers. Do not let me eat their delicacies. 1 Peter 1:14-15. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who called you is kadosh, so be kadosh in all you do. Luke 4:8. Yahusha answered, It is written, Worship YAHUAH your YAHUAH and serve him only. 1 Timothy 6:9. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. James 4:7. Submit yourselves then to YAHUAH. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. 1 Corinthians 6:9-10. Or do you not know that wrongdoers will not inherit the kingdom of YAHUAH? Do not be deceived. Neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor men who have sex with men, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor slanderers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of YAHUAH. Romans 8, 5-6. Those who live according to the flesh have their mind set on what the flesh desires, but those who live in accordance with the Ruah have their mind set on what the Ruah desires. The mind governed by the flesh is death, but the mind governed by the Ruah is life and peace. Galatians 5:16-17. So I say, walk by the Ruah, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Ruah, and the Ruah what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want. Hebrews 12:4. In your struggle against transgression, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. 2 Peter 1:3-4. His divine power has given us everything we need for a righteous life through our knowledge of Him who called us by His own esteem and goodness. Through these He has given us His very great and precious promises, so that through them you may participate in the divine nature, having escaped the corruption in the world caused by evil desires. 1 John 2:15-17. Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of YAHUAH lives forever. Psalms 51:10. Create in me a pure heart, O YAHUAH, and renew a steadfast Ruah within me. 1 Corinthians 15:57. But thanks be to YAHUAH. He gives us the victory through our Master Yahusha HaMashiach. In the word, forgiveness is deeply tied to YAHUAH's nature and His relationship with humanity. It refers to the act of pardoning someone for their wrongdoing, restoring relationships, and removing the guilt of transgression. Forgiveness in the word has two key aspects: YAHUAH's forgiveness of people and people's forgiveness of others. 1. YAHUAH's forgiveness. YAHUAH's forgiveness is a demonstration of His mercy, favor, and love. Despite humanity's rebellion and transgression, YAHUAH is willing to forgive those who repent and turn to Him. His forgiveness is complete, meaning that He wipes away the transgression and no longer holds them against the person. A key example of this is found in Psalms 103 verse 12, as far as the east is from the west, so far has He removed our transgressions from us. Isaiah 1 verse 18. YAHUAH says, though your transgressions are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow, though they are red as crimson, they shall be like wool. 2. Forgiveness through Yahusha. In the renewed covenant, aka the New Testament, forgiveness is closely linked to the work of Yahusha HaMashiach. Through Yahusha's death and resurrection, YAHUAH offers forgiveness of transgressions to all who believe in Him. Yahusha's sacrifice is seen as the ultimate act of atonement, making forgiveness available to humanity. Ephesians 1 verse 7. In Him we have redemption through His blood, the forgiveness of transgressions, in accordance with the riches of YAHUAH's favor. 1 John 1 verse 9. If we confess our transgressions, He is faithful and just to forgive us our transgressions and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. 3. Forgiving others. Believers are called to forgive others just as YAHUAH has forgiven them. Forgiving others is not just an option, but a command in the Word. It reflects YAHUAH's own nature and His desire for shalom and reconciliation among His people. Yahusha emphasizes this in Matthew 6 verses 14-15, for if you forgive other people when they transgress against you, your Father in the Shalom will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their transgressions, your Father will not forgive your transgressions. Colossians 3 verse 13. Bear with each other, and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as YAHUAH forgave you. 4. Restoration and reconciliation. Forgiveness in the Word is not just about canceling a debt, it is about restoring relationships. YAHUAH's forgiveness allows people to have a renewed relationship with Him, and in the same way, people are encouraged to reconcile with one another. Luke 15 verses 11-32, the parable of the prodigal son. This story illustrates YAHUAH's heart of forgiveness. The Father, representing YAHUAH, forgives His Son and restores him despite his rebellion, showing that YAHUAH welcomes transgressors who repent. 5. The power of forgiveness. Forgiveness brings freedom, both for the one who forgives and the one who is forgiven. It frees the heart from bitterness, anger, and resentment, and it aligns believers with Yahuwah's will. Forgiveness, therefore, is seen as a pathway to healing and growing in Ruah. In summary, forgiveness in the Word is an act of favor and love from Yahuwah, extended through Yahusha, and a reflection of Yahuwah's character. It is not just a legal pardon but a way to restore broken relationships, both with Yahuwah and with others.
The 1,000-year reign, often referred to as the millennial reign of Yahusha, is a period described in Revelation 20:1-6, where Yahusha is said to rule the earth for 1,000 years. This reign is characterized by righteousness, shalom, and justice, as Yahusha governs with the Kadashim, saints, over the earth. 1. Shaitan bound. The passage begins with a messenger from Shamaim coming down and binding Shaitan for 1,000 years, casting him into the abyss so that he can no longer deceive the nations. Revelation 21:3. During this time, the influence of evil is restrained. 2. Yahusha's reign. During the 1,000 years, Yahusha reigns as the sovereign ruler over the earth, fulfilling the promises of deliverance for Yasharal. This reign is seen as a time of barakah, a blessing for the earth, as Yahusha and the Kadashim, those who have been resurrected or who remain faithful to Yahuwah, will rule with righteousness. Revelation 24:6. 3. The role of the Kadashim, those who were faithful, who had been martyred for their testimony of Yahusha and for their adherence to the Torah, are said to reign with Yahusha. They experienced the first resurrection and are Baruch to not face the second death, the final judgment. Revelation 24:6. 4. A time of restoration. Many see this period as a time when the earth is restored to its intended state before the fall of man. Prophecies in books like Yasharal, Isaiah 11:6-9 describe a time when creation is at shalom, peace, and the knowledge of Yahuwah fills the earth. The Mashiach reigns from Yahushalom, and all nations come to worship Yahuwah. 5. Shaitan's release and final judgment. At the end of the 1,000 years, Shaitan is released for a short time and deceives the nations once more. This leads to a final rebellion, but Yahuwah intervenes and defeats Shaitan and those who follow him. Revelation 27:10. Shaitan is then cast into the lake of fire where the Shadim and false Nabim prophets already are. 6. Final judgment. After the millennial reign, the final judgment takes place, where all people are judged according to their works. This is known as the Great White Throne Judgment. Revelation 20:11-15. 7. New Shamaim and New Earth. After the final judgment, Yahuwah creates a new Shamaim and a new earth where Yahuwah and his living word will dwell with the Kadashim for eternity. Revelation 21. In summary, the 1,000 period in which the Shamaim, heavens, reign on earth, fulfills the promises to Yasharal and establishes righteousness and shalom before the final defeat of Shaitan and the ultimate establishment of Yahuwah's eternal kingdom. The concept of being grafted into Yasharal is deeply rooted in the scriptures, beyond just Shaul's, Paul's letters. It highlights the idea that Yahuwah's covenant with Yasharal is open to all who turn back to him and follow his Torah, not just the native Yasharali, Israelite. This theme is evident throughout both the first covenant, Old Testament, and the renewed covenant, New Testament. 1. The promise to Abraham. In Bereshit, Genesis 12:3, Yahuwah tells Abraham that through his seed, all the nations of the earth will be Baruch, blessed. This indicates that the favor of Yahuwah was not intended exclusively just for the native of Yasharal, but for all who would come into covenant with him. This barakah, blessing, foreshadows the future inclusion of those from other nations. 2. Ruth as a Gentile. Grafted in, the story of Ruth is an excellent example. Ruth was a Moabite who chose to align herself with Yasharal and their Alua, Yahuwah. In Ruth 1:16, she says, "Your people shall be my people, and your Alua my Alua." Because of her Amunah and loyalty, Ruth became part of Yasharal. 3. Yashayahu, Isaiah 56, 6, 7. Here, YAHUAH speaks of foreigners who join themselves to YAHUAH to serve him and to love the name of YAHUAH to be his servants. He promises that these individuals will be brought to his Kadash mountain and their offerings will be accepted. This passage emphasizes that those from the nations who align themselves with YAHUAH are welcome into his covenant people. 4. Mashiach as a light to the nations. Yashayahu 42, 6 and 49. 6 both speak of Yasharal's role in being a light to the nations. The Mashiach, Messiah, as the ultimate representative of Yasharal, extends Yahuwah's deliverance to the nations, showing that the mission of Yasharal was to draw others into Yahuwah's covenant. 5. Renewed covenant, New Testament. While Shaul Paul discusses grafting in Romans 11, Yahusha himself spoke of the inclusion of others into Yasharal. Yahuhanan, John 10:16. Yahusha says, "And other sheep I have which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd." This is understood as Yahusha referring to non-Yasharalim being brought into the fold of Yasharal under his leadership. 6. Ephesians 2:11-13 ties back to this larger scriptural theme. Here, Shaul explains that Gentiles who were once far off are now brought near by the blood of Yahusha. He emphasizes that they are no longer strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with a Kadashim and members of the household of Yahuwah. This shows that by accepting the covenant through Yahusha, Gentiles become part of Yasharal. The idea of being grafted into Yasharal isn't just a New Testament or Pauline concept, but flows throughout the scriptures. From the promises to Abraham, to the inclusion of Ruth, to Yashayahu's prophecies of Yasharal being a light to the nations, Yahuwah's plan was always to invite people from every nation to be part of his covenant through Amunah and obedience to his Turah. Yahusha's role as Mashiach further fulfilled this by making the covenant accessible to all who turn back to Yahuwah and follow his ways. The nature and character of Yahuwah are central to understanding who he is and how he relates to his creation, particularly to his people, Yasharal. The scriptures provide numerous descriptions and attributes of Yahuwah, highlighting his unmatched power, wisdom, love, and righteousness. 1. Yahuwah is one. Yahuwah is described as the one and only true Aluah, emphasizing his uniqueness. Hear, O Yasharal, Yahuwah our Aluah Yahuwah is one. Dabarim, Deuteronomy 6:4. This affirms that Yahuwah is indivisible and the only real Aluah. 2. Yahuwah is eternal and unchanging. Yahuwah exists outside of time, having no beginning or end. He is eternal. Before the mountains were born, or you had brought forth the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are Aluah Tahalim, Psalms 92. Moreover, he does not change. For I am Yahuwah, I shall not change. Malachi 3:6. His nature and promises are consistent, which provides assurance and stability to his people. 3. Yahuwah is righteous and just. Yahuwah is perfectly righteous and just in all his ways. His judgments are true and fair. Righteousness and right ruling are the foundation of your throne. Loving kindness and truth go before your face. Talim, Psalms 89:14. He cannot tolerate evil, and his judgments are always based on righteousness. This is seen in how he deals with transgression and rebellion while showing mercy to those who turn back to him. 4. Yahuwah is compassionate and merciful. Despite his perfect justice, Yahuwah is also full of compassion and mercy. He is patient with his people, giving them opportunities to turn back to him. Yahuwah is compassionate and showing favor, patient and great in kindness. Talim, Psalms 103:8. His mercy is seen in how he continually provides for his people and forgives those who seek him with a sincere heart. 5. Yahuwah is loving. One of the most remarkable aspects of Yahuwah's character is his deep love for his people. He demonstrates his love in the covenants he makes with Yasharal and ultimately through the gift of Yahusha, the Mashiach, his living word. For YAHUAH so loved the world that he gave his only brought forth son, so that everyone who believes in him should not perish, but possess everlasting life. Yahuhanan, John 3:16. His love is steadfast, and it is through his love that his people find deliverance. 6. Yahuwah is omnipotent, all-powerful. Yahuwah's power is limitless. He is the creator of the Shama-im and the earth, and nothing is impossible for him. Ah, Master Yahuwah, see you have made the Shama-im and the earth by your great power and outstretched arm. There is no matter too hard for you. Yaram Yahu, Jeremiah 32:17. His power is evident in creation, in his mighty acts throughout history, and in his ability to bring about his plans. 7. Yahuwah is all-knowing. Yahuwah knows everything. He sees the end from the beginning and understands all things, both visible and invisible. For Yahuwah is an Aluah of knowledge, and by him deeds are weighed. 1 Samuel 2:3. His knowledge is perfect, and nothing can be hidden from him, whether it be the thoughts of men or the future. 8. Yahuwah is omnipresent, present everywhere. Though Yahuwah is enthroned in Shamaim, he is present everywhere. His presence fills the world, and no one can escape his sight. Where would I go from your Ruah, or where would I flee from your face? If I go up into the Shamaim, you are there. If I make my bed in Sha'ul, see, you are there. Talim, Psalms 139:7-8. Yahuwah's omnipresence assures his people that he is always near, watching over them and hearing their prayers. 9. Yahuwah is faithful. Yahuwah is faithful to his promises. What he says he will do, and his word can be trusted completely. Know therefore that Yahuwah your Aluah, he is Aluah, the trustworthy all, guarding covenant and kindness for 1,000 generations with those who love him and keep his commands. Dabarim, Deuteronomy 7:9. His faithfulness ensures that his people can rely on him in all circumstances, knowing that he will fulfill his word. 10. Yahuwah is Kadash. Yahuwah is completely Kadash from transgression and impurity. He is perfect in his Kadashness, and he calls his people to be Kadash as well. For I am Yahuwah your Aluah, and you shall Kadash yourselves, and you shall be Kadash, for I am Kadash. Leviticus 11:44. His Kadashness sets the standard for his people to live lives of purity and devotion to him. Yahuwah's nature and character reveal that he is the supreme, sovereign Aluah, full of righteousness, love, mercy, and truth. He is both transcendent, existing beyond creation, and yet immanent, intimately involved with his people. Understanding his nature helps us to draw closer to him, trusting in his faithfulness and seeking to reflect his character in our own lives. From the very beginning in creation to empowering Yahuwah's people, the Ruah HaKadosh has been a vital force in fulfilling the purposes of Yahuwah. 1. The Ruah HaKadosh in creation. The Ruah HaKadosh is present from the very beginning, playing a crucial role in creation. Barashit, Genesis 1:2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Ruah of Aluah was moving on the face of the waters. This shows that the Ruah HaKadosh was actively involved in bringing order to creation, hovering over the waters. 2. The Ruah HaKadosh gives life. The Ruah HaKadosh is directly responsible for giving life to Yahuwah's creation, particularly humanity. Job 33:4. The Ruah of Aluah has made me, and the breath of the Almighty gives me life. Barashit, Genesis 2:7. And Yahuwah Aluah formed a man out of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. In these verses, we see that life itself is imparted through the breath of Aluah, which can be understood as the action of the Ruah. 3. The Ruah HaKadosh empowers people. Throughout the scriptures, the Ruah HaKadosh comes upon people to empower them for specific purposes, particularly the prophets, judges, and leaders. Judges 3:10. And the Ruah of YAHUAH came upon him, and he ruled Yasharal and went out to battle, and YAHUAH gave Cushan Rishathaim, sovereign of Aram, into his hand. 1 Samuel 10:6. And the Ruah of YAHUAH shall come upon you, and you shall prophesy with them and be turned into another man. These instances show how YAHUAH sends his Ruah to empower individuals for leadership, prophecy, and deliverance. 4. The Ruah HaKadosh teaches and guides. The Ruah HaKadosh is also portrayed as a teacher and guide, especially in the writings of the Nabi'im, prophets. Yashayahu, Isaiah 11:2. The Ruah of YAHUAH shall rest upon him, the Ruah of wisdom and understanding, the Ruah of counsel and might, the Ruah of knowledge and of the fear of YAHUAH. Here, the Ruah is described as imparting wisdom, understanding, and counsel to those upon whom it rests. Yahuhanan, John 14:26. But the Helper, the Ruah HaKadosh, whom the Father shall send in my name, he shall teach you all and remind you of all that I said to you. In this verse, Yahusha emphasizes that the Ruah HaKadosh will continue to guide and teach the Talmudim, disciples, after his departure. 5. The Ruah HaKadosh in the life of Yahusha. The Ruah HaKadosh is deeply connected with the life and ministry of Yahusha, from his immersion to his role in deliverance. Luke 3:21-22. And it came to be, when all the people were immersed, Yahusha also being immersed and praying, the Shema'im was opened, and the Ruah HaKadosh descended in bodily form like a dove upon him, and a voice came from Shema'im saying, You are my son, the beloved, in you I did delight. Here the Ruah descends upon Yahusha at his immersion, showing Yahuwah's approval and empowering him for his ministry. 6. The Ruah HaKadosh in deliverance. The Ruah HaKadosh is the means by which people experience deliverance and the new birth. Yahuhanan, John 3:5-6. Yahusha answered, Truly, truly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and the Ruah, he is unable to enter into the reign of YAHUAH. That which has been born of the flesh is flesh, and that which has been born of the Ruah is Ruah. Titus 3:5. He saved us, not by works of righteousness which we have done, but according to his compassion, through the washing of rebirth and renewal by the Ruah HaKadosh. These verses emphasize the role of the Ruah in bringing about new spiritual life, a necessary aspect of being in the kingdom of YAHUAH. 7. The Ruah HaKadosh in the last days. The Ruah HaKadosh is essential in the prophecies about the end times, particularly in pouring out upon all people. You all, Joel 2:28-29. And after this, it shall be that I pour out my Ruah on all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men dream dreams, your young men see visions. And also on the male servants and on the female servants I shall pour out my Ruah in those days. This prophecy, later quoted by Kappa, Peter, in Acts 2, speaks of a widespread outpouring of the Ruah HaKadosh in the last days, empowering all believers for prophetic ministry. 8. Walking in the Ruah. Finally, the covenant emphasizes the need for believers to live according to the Ruah, bearing the fruit of the Ruah and not fulfilling the desires of the flesh. Galatians 5:16-22-23. And I say, walk in the Ruah, and you shall not accomplish the lust of the flesh. But the fruit of the Ruah is love, joy, shalom, patience, kindness, goodness, trustworthiness, gentleness, self-control. Walking by the Ruah leads to a transformed life characterized by these qualities. The Ruah HaKadosh is central to the life of a believer, from creation to the new birth, and plays a vital role in guidance, empowerment, and transformation. The scriptures consistently portray the Ruah, as the power of YAHUAH working in the world and in his people. Living in step with the Ruah HaKadosh means living in alignment with Yahuwah's will, bearing the fruit of Amunah, and being led into all truth. Let us seek the continual infilling of the Ruah HaKadosh and strive to walk according to the Ruah, being vessels of Yahuwah's purpose and esteem. Halalu Yahuwah. The Turah, often translated as law, but more accurately understood as instruction or teaching, is central to understanding Yahuwah's will for Yasharal and humanity. It is the foundation of Yahuwah's Brit, also known as covenant, with his people, and is meant to guide us in living righteous and Kadash lives. 1. Purpose of the Turah. The Turah was given to Yasharal to set them apart as Yahuwah's Kadash people. It reveals Yahuwah's character and how his people should live in response to his favor. It teaches principles for righteous living, justice, and relationships with Yahuwah and others. And Yahuwah commanded us to do all these laws, to revere Yahuwah our Aluah for our good always, to keep us alive as it is today. Deuteronomy 6:24. 2. Fulfillment, not abolition. Yahusha did not come to abolish the Turah, but to fulfill and bring greater understanding. His teachings often clarified the true intent behind the commands, focusing on heart attitude and Amunah, faith, rather than mere external observance. Do not think that I came to destroy the Turah or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to complete. For truly, I say to you, till the Shamaim and the earth pass away, one yud or one tittle shall by no means pass from the Turah till all be done. Matat Yahu, Matthew 5:17 to 18:3. The Turah and Amunah go hand in hand. The Turah instructs on how to live in alignment with Yahuwah's will, while Amunah empowers us to live according to it. It is through the Ruah HaKadosh that we are strengthened to keep Yahuwah's commandments in love and truth. For this is the love for Yahuwah, that we guard his commands, and his commands are not heavy. 1 Yahuhanan, John 5:3. 4. Turah as freedom, not burden. Contrary to how it is often misunderstood, the Turah is not a burden, but a guide that leads to true freedom in Yahuwah. It provides structure, wisdom, and protection for living in his esteem. Obeying the Turah brings barakah, while neglecting it leads to consequences. But he who looks into the perfect Turah, that of freedom, and continues in it, not becoming a hearer that forgets, but a doer of the work, this one shall be Baruch in his doing of the Turah. Yakub, James 1:25. The Turah is Yahuwah's instruction for living a Kadash life. Yahusha came to fulfill, not abolish, the Turah. Obedience to the Turah, empowered by Amunah, brings freedom and barakah. The Turah is eternal, and living by it shows love for Yahuwah. There are those who teach Yahusha is the messenger, angel, Michael. But what does Scripture actually say? The Scriptures show clear distinctions between Yahusha as the Mashiach and Michael, the high-ranking messenger of Yahuwah. Let's explore this topic with key scriptures to see why Yahusha and Michael are not the same person. 1. Yahusha is the son of Yahuwah, not a created messenger. Yahuwah explicitly calls Yahusha his son. In Matthew 3:17, Yahuwah says, "This is my beloved son, in whom I am well pleased." No messenger is ever called the son of Yahuwah in this way. Messengers are created beings, while Yahusha, as the son, being an extension of Yahuwah, as Yahuwah's living word, is of the same essence as Yahuwah and eternally existent, because Yahusha is Yahuwah. 2. Yahusha is identified as the word of Yahuwah made flesh. Yahuhanan, John 1:14 explains, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Yahuwah, and the Word was Yahuwah, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us." This unique identity as the Word who became flesh is never ascribed to Michael. Michael is a messenger, whereas Yahusha is the embodiment of Yahuwah's Word, fulfilling prophecy and becoming the Mashiach. 3. Yahusha has authority to forgive transgressions. Matatyahu, Matthew 9:6 shows Yahusha's authority. But in order for you to know that the son of Adam possesses authority on earth to forgive transgressions, forgiveness of transgressions is an authority exclusive to YAHUAH, exercised by Yahusha. Messengers, including Michael, do not possess this authority, highlighting Yahusha's unique role as YAHUAH manifest in the flesh. 4. Yahusha is worshipped, Michael is not. Philippians 2:10-11 says that at the name of Yahusha, every knee should bow and every tongue should confess that Yahusha HaMashiach is Yahuwah. Worship is reserved for Yahuwah alone, and it's explicitly granted to Yahusha because Yahusha is Yahuwah. Michael, like all other messengers, does not receive worship and would even rebuke anyone attempting it. See Revelation 22:8-9. 5. Yahusha is the only mediator between Yahuwah and humanity. 1 Timothy 2:5 states, "For there is one Eluah and one mediator between Eluah and men, the man Mashiach Yahusha." Yahusha uniquely mediates between humanity and Yahuwah. Michael's role is that of a defender of Yasharal, not a mediator. 6. Yahusha holds supreme authority over all creation. In Matatyahu, Matthew 28:18, Yahusha declares, "All authority has been given to me in Shema'im and on earth." Such authority is exclusive to Yahusha and is not attributed to any messenger, including Michael. Michael, as a messenger, acts under authority, but Yahusha is the one who possesses supreme authority over all creation. 7. Yahusha is the Mashiach, Michael is not. In Yahuhanan, John 4:25-26, Yahusha reveals himself as the Mashiach. The woman said to him, "I know that Mashiach is coming." Yahusha said to her, "I who speak to you am he." The Mashiach is a unique role only Yahusha fulfills. Michael is not mentioned as the Mashiach, but rather as a messenger and protector of Yasharal. Yahusha, whom is Yahuwah, alone is the promised Savior who fulfills the prophecies of deliverance. 8. Yahusha has the power to judge, a role never attributed to Michael. Yahuhanan, John 5:22 says, "For the Father judges no one, but has given all the judgment to the Son." Michael, although a chief messenger, is never described as a judge. Judgment is a role and authority granted solely to Yahusha, highlighting his supreme position. 9. Yahusha's role in the resurrection, not Michael's. Yahuhanan, John 11:25 states, Yahusha said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life." Yahusha has the power to raise the dead and give eternal life. Michael does not have this authority or role in the resurrection. This ability uniquely aligns with Yahusha's identity as Yahuwah manifest in the flesh. 10. Michael is depicted as a warrior messenger, and Yahusha as the Prince of Shalom, peace, and Savior. In Daniel 12:1, Michael is described as standing up to protect Yasharal during a time of trouble. However, Yahusha's mission is to bring deliverance, as stated in Matatyahu, Matthew 1:21, "For he shall save his people from their transgressions." While Michael's role involves warfare and protection, Yahusha's role centers on deliverance and restoration. This key difference highlights that Yahusha's mission is far greater than that of any messenger. 11. Yahusha is given the name above all names. Philippians 2:9 states, "Eluah therefore has highly exalted him and given him the name which is above every name." The name of Yahusha is exalted above all names, including those of any messengers. No messenger, including Michael, holds a name that all creation will bow to. This supreme honor and esteem is exclusively Yahusha's, because Yahusha is Yahuwah. Yahusha means Yahuwah saves. 12. The return of Yahusha versus the role of Michael in the end times. Matatyahu, Matthew 24:30-31 describes Yahusha's return with power and authority. And then The sign of the son of Adam shall appear in the Shamaim. They shall see the son of Adam coming on the clouds of the Shamaim with power and great esteem. Michael is mentioned in the end times, particularly in protecting Yasharal, Daniel 12:1, but he is not the one who comes in judgment. Yahusha alone will return to judge the nations and establish his reign, making his role distinct from any messenger. Conclusion. In summary, these 12 points show that Yahusha is not Michael. Yahusha is the Mashiach and has supreme authority over all creation. He is worshipped, mediates on behalf of humanity, forgives transgressions, and will return to judge the world. Michael, as a high-ranking messenger, has a distinct role, but is not the savior, redeemer, or the word made flesh. The scriptures clearly establish these roles as separate, affirming that Yahusha is not Michael the archangel. Yahusha is YAHUAH.